Okay, welcome to Advisory Design Panel on Thursday, August 20th, 2020 at 2 p.m. I'd like to make note that this meeting is held electronically on Squamish Nation traditional territory. I'll just run through some quick procedures for electronic meetings to begin with. Committee members attending the meeting electronically are required to advise the chair of the meeting of the following circumstances. When the committee member disconnects, so that this can be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. Committee members are to identify themselves when they advise the chair that they wish to be placed on the speakers list. With respect to a vote, committee members are only required to state a nay vote. No statement is required if the member is in favor. Committee members shall be involved in and participate in the meeting. Committee members shall text, and I believe it's going to be Vanessa today, so she'll put her number in the comments section here if they have any technical difficulties, and the meeting shall be recessed for up to 10 minutes if a technical difficulty occurs on the district side. Okay, I'll do a quick roll call now if I can. I'll just run through the last agenda attendees and see who's here. So John Jervis is not here. Farzan, here. Mike Van Kapel. Mike, can you hear us? Or?
I think Mike might be muted. Mike, can you... Oh, there we go. Hello.
Oh, Mike. We got Mike. Okay. Jackie? Jackie, are you there? I think I saw her. Jackie, can you say here or wave?
My screen isn't on. Oh, here.
Oh, hey. Hi, Jackie. Perfect. Sarah?
Hi.
You? Perfect. Carlos?
Yeah, here.
Yeah, go. Brent?
Yep. Hello.
Great. Jenna? I don't think Jenna's here. Is that correct? Yeah. Christina? No, Christina. Tanis? Tanis.
Sorry, David. Christina was on the phone a minute ago, so let me just confirm.
I am.
Going. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, there she is.
We have Christina.
I'm here.
Okay, I hear a voice. Okay.
Sorry, I'm driving.
No, that's so good. Graham? Do you have Graham today? Don't think so. Okay, I think that's everyone. If I've missed anyone, let me know. Myself. Okay, we'll move on to the agenda, the adoption of last time's agenda. Is there any discussion or any comments about the agenda last time?
I had a quick one.
Yeah.
I think that after, I think specifically in regards to the bridge conversation that we had, I think it'd be good if moving forward we consider a way to better tabulate the panel's inputs on various projects. I think there was some mixed reviews of that, and I'm not exactly confident that what is captured is like really represents our fulsome discussion that we had on it. So I just want to put a comment to that. I think it's probably something for us to modify as we move forward, not necessarily for that project alone, because I think that's already hopefully moving its way through the process. But
yeah. Yep. Fair enough. I think when I read the minutes, it sometimes captures a small side of what some people are discussing, whether it's in favor or not in favor. So it should be maybe just pointed out in the minutes who was maybe strongly for or strongly against, or if it was a general committee thought. Yeah, and sorry, was that Jackie that had a comment?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Okay. My question is that in terms of things like risk committee, if it could be better put in context as to what exactly and why exactly it's being put to us, that kind of thing, it kind of caught us all off guard, and as to why it was being put forward to us. So if committee, if staff could contextualize that when they give it to us in the agenda.
Okay, perfect. And then just a slight procedural thing there. I forgot that we should actually adopt this agenda. So can I have someone, Carlos, and second, Sarah? Perfect, thanks. That's the only mistake I'll make today. It's all good. And then we already did the committee minutes. So can I move for adoption of those minutes? Jackie, and second, Farzan? Perfect. Okay, going forward, the new business. So we have development permit 537-1115 Enterprise Way. I'll hand it over to Asia Philp for this.
Thanks, David. And I'm wondering if, just from a procedural standpoint to start, we need to recognize that Farzan is presenting this, and so he needs to recuse himself from the panel for this item. So we'll formally recognize that in the minutes here.
Absolutely.
And
Perfect.
then just quickly, staff and our minute takers are in the room, and we did hear the comments from Carlos and Jackie just now. So let us kind of digest that, and if there's any suggestions or recommendations from staff, kind of as additional discussion on that item of how to more clearly represent perhaps some of the minutes, then we'll have that discussion and we can maybe talk about that at the next ADP meeting. I'll raise that with Jonas Velanishkis as well. Getting the thumbs up from Carlos. Okay, sounds good. Thanks, guys. All right, so I won't spend too much time here before I pass it along to Farzan, who's the architect on this project. So DP 537 is located at 1115 Enterprise Way. It's in the southern end of the business park. This is for a new industrial building of approximately 10,000 square feet. It's being built within the I-11 zone, which permits a variety of light industrial uses. And the particular proposed use here is for some sort of motor vehicle repair type shop. And we're bringing it to the panel today to review against Development Permit Area 9. That's the Industrial Employment Guidelines we'll be reviewing it against. And generally, staff are supportive of the overall plan. We request ADP's feedback on the site layout, site circulation, building form and character, and materials, as well as landscaping. I had a couple specific notes in the staff report around a lack of some details around some items like the retaining walls and fencing, some of the lighting and signage, and so the applicant's presentation, it looks like some of this has been addressed. I haven't had a chance to review it in detail, but the applicant is actively working to address some of those requests to provide that further detail. I think that's it from my end. So yeah, we're just looking for general ADP comments on this, and I will pass it along to Farzan to go through the architect's presentation. So Tori, if you could give Farzan the presenter ball, and Farzan, let us know if you're able to share your screen or if you need technical support.
Thank you, Aja. Yes, I'm trying to share the content. to do that.
Farzan, it looks like it's working, but that it might be loading. We have just a blank black screen here at Muni Hall.
Oh, I see. I'm trying to see how I can do that.
Farzan, do you have 2 monitors going or just one?
Just one monitor.
Okay.
I'm trying to see how I can share.
So in the top left-hand corner, there should be some kind of sharing icon that will enable.
Share my No, I don't know how.
Yeah, so we can see your screen now, Farzan. Your PDF, your Adobe is very small. So once we get that enlarged, you should be good to go.
Okay. Is it okay now?
It's still not taking up the full screen from our perspective.
How is that?
Now you're good.
Okay, let's go. This building is fairly in a small lot and it's fairly simple project. The main issue, as Ajam mentioned, can you hear me? Was the FCL because of the flood plain level. We had lots of issue to have the ramp coming up from the street. We didn't have that much of the distance. But we somehow managed. The slope was the main issue, and the accessibility for the entrance was another issue that somehow we managed it through side front elevation. It's one-story prefabricated steel structure building, and all the comments with regards to here it is. Okay, maybe that's it. This is the accessible parking that comes here. The park for the accessible parking is right here, which is all this is flat, and the parking access to the main entrances, one here and one over here, are fairly easy to the both entrances. There will be 2 sections of this building. One would be occupied by the owner. The other side would be rented, possibly to the same type of car or automobile services. And as I said, the major issue was this slope, which we end up with 12% slope, and it's accepted by engineering and the civil engineer. This is the access of pedestrians that can come here with the DC code requirement. This area, because of the flood issue, we just dedicated for the landscaping, and the parking meets what they required, 19 parking zones that is required. Let's go. One more thing is the garbage at this corner is now enclosed completely. That was one of the comments by planning that was revised, and the loading bay is back here at the start of the project. Roof plan. Oh, way back. We have the landscape. This is the north elevations from the street. All the lighting is on the side of the overhang, all 4 sides of the building. We have overhangs here with the lighting under the overhang. This is the south elevation. East elevation. The are the sections, fairly straightforward, and these are the garbage area enclosure. I think that goes with the fencing as well, right? Same detail for the fences. This is the landscape drawings. And this is the environmentally sensitive area assessment and calculations and the details for it. That's it. So, sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you say that's your
That's
presentation?
it. That's it.
Okay, so are you happy for us just to go to questions now?
Yes, please.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll start with Mike, if that's okay.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Perfect. Thanks for the presentation, Farzan. Just a couple questions about the possible variances, I guess. So the planning department was mentioning that the garbage building had to be fully enclosed, and I guess by it being fully enclosed, it would be an accessory building. Sorry.
Yeah, it's pretty enclosed as far as I know, but I didn't put any roof on it. It's just all fences around it.
Okay, so is that what the planning department wanted? Like it didn't have a roof on it, just had to have walls on all four sides?
That was my understanding.
And so the way it sits right now with no setback, there's not going to be a variance required for that?
I didn't hear any variance about that.
I can jump in and speak to that. Farzan, if you didn't hear Mike's question, I think he was asking if there would be a need for any variances for the waste room as it's considered an accessory building. And so looking at the most recent site plan, Mike, I believe that, yeah, there would need to be minor variances for the side and the rear setback because it looks like the waste room is almost abutting the property lines.
Okay.
The letdown, I guess, like to access the property, was there a limitation on how wide that could be? So like the access ramp that you have.
The limitation was the slope. And we started based on the civil engineer requirement was 5 to 10%, but we couldn't achieve the F. It's still a bit short of recommended FCL, which we come up to 12% slope. And it's very close to FCL, but considering the size of the lot, we couldn't go any higher. So the whole conclusion was to keep it at 12% and few inches below the FCL.
Right. I think that's all the questions I have right now, David. Thanks, President.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. I just noted that Jenna's joined us here. I don't know if you were on the first roll call.
I was, but I didn't have access to speak, so I've been logged on. I just didn't have access to speak.
Good. Okay. Well, nice to see you and hear you. Sweet. I'll add you. Jackie, your question?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so my question, Farzan, thank you. It's a lovely building. Aesthetically, it'll set the standard, I think, for the area. You said the owner will own the one part of the building. Will that be for automotive?
Correct.
Or both? Okay, and so what kind of signage at the street level are you going to have? Are you going to have like a pylon or something like that? I didn't see anything there.
Yeah, it is illuminated. You see how I can get there. How do I share that?
Farzan, we're just going to let you share your screen again. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, as you can see, it is raised round, and it is illuminated through the downlight from the top. And there are two, as I said, there are two tenants. The one that says automotive collusion, this is the one that is already has one shop in North Vancouver, and this is the second one in Squamish. The right-hand one would be probably rented.
Okay, and so part two of my question was sort of wayfinding signage at the street, the driveway entrance. Would you have something there or not?
So we haven't, not at the street, no, it's just on the building because it's only few feet from the property line.
Okay, and in terms of, I think, fire access and garbage truck access, is there enough access there?
Yes, it has been reviewed by the civil engineer and code consultant, and they both agreed that it makes here, back here, all three sides we have access.
Okay, thank you very much, Farzan.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thanks, Jackie. We'll go to Sarah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Excellent. So, Farzan, just because the drawings that we have didn't actually have the access ramp on, I just wanted to verify it's 12% the ramp?
12% is for the automatic for the car access, not for the pedestrian, not for the accessible. That's only 6%. Back here on the outside, that's 6%. Pedestrian, yes.
And can you just tell me what the dimensions are of the accessible parking spot that's in the
parking
front?
is 5.79 for the depth, and the other side, how much is that?
The width is
2.74 plus 1.5 meter at the side. 2.74 plus 1.5 meter.
That's a little short of what the CSA recommendations are, but
We have room for it, Sarah.
pardon me?
We can make it larger if it needs to because we have plenty of space back there.
Okay, it's at the front of the building, correct?
It's at the side of the building. It's in front of the building, yes.
In front of the building. Okay.
Right.
And then, are the washrooms, at least one of them, going to be accessible inside?
Yes, actually, it's universal washroom. It has one shower in it as well.
Okay. Yeah, that's all my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Sarah. Carlos?
Hi, Farzan. Yeah, thanks. Sorry if I missed it, but is the intention that this is a pre-engineered steel structure?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And did you have the opportunity to look into any alternative materials other than steel?
That's what the owner wants. Actually, of course, that's his intention. It is already discussed with the manufacturer.
Right. And then, so I guess, have you engaged a pre-eng supplier yet, just to look at kind of some of the detailing you've got for your posts and roof configuration, et cetera?
Exactly. That's from a manufacturer supplier.
Right. And then you're just, you're kind of prettying it up with some treatment on the exterior.
Exactly.
Okay. And then I see that you've got like a generous overhang with some lighting, but was there any exploration of overhangs closer to the ground floor to provide some cover from our sideways rain that we tend to get here?
On this side, I'm sorry, I missed it. Yeah, I have it, a large one at the north side, which is the entrance. The rest are not actually, there is no access around. There is access, but there is no pedestrian or public access. It's just one side parking, one side is loading bay, and the other side is just for the maintenance access.
Right, but I guess, so, but there's an overhang, there's a generous overhang at the north end, but it's,
right.
6 or 7 meters high. Did you look at doing any overhangs just more directly over top of the doors?
No, not really. It has a little bit in the front, but not very much. I think remember what the height.
Okay.
No, into any other overhang.
Okay, I think that's all my questions.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Carlos. Brent?
Right. Thank you, Farzan. One question that I had was with garbage access. Has the turning movement been run for a garbage truck or a large vehicle to back into the garbage area? It looks kind of tight if there's cars parked.
It's actually, it's actually right next to loading bay, back here. So if the truck comes here, it's right next to it.
Yeah, so, but for this truck to back in there, is the expectation they would come in through the parking lot and then back in, sort of, you'd need maybe one of those parking spots not to be used?
That's very true, but I'd rather have the truck coming than have this solid waste storage in front of the building. It can be placed in front, of course, but you have the TMP, you have the bicycle storage, you have the handicap parks, so, and of course, I think the bin can be rolled in front because it's fairly big. And the front part that is the north side, which has a little bit of slope, but the rest is almost flat. Only 2% slope for the drainage. This is all flat. So, and it's quite wide, I think. I can double check it with the engineer.
Okay. Yeah, just something, looking at it, it looks as though it might be tight, so something to think about. And then I had another question with, what's the grade difference, or is there a fence that's on the edge of the property, kind of at the top of the retaining wall?
Well, we were going to have a changing here and here, but nothing on the other side.
Okay, so it's landscaping on the other side, sloping down to grade?
Right. This is because of this ditch here. And this is the sensitive area, the environmentally sensitive area. So we didn't put any chain or any chaining or anything like that.
Okay. And then as far as stormwater, it's sloped to that ditch, or?
The ditch.
It's not contained on site?
No.
No. Okay. Those are my only questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Brent. We'll go to Christina.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
I don't have any questions.
Okay, perfect. We'll go to Jenna next.
Thank you. With regards to the paving materials, from a pedestrian's perspective, what materiality are we looking at? Is it asphalt around the entire extent, or is there a difference of material?
No asphalt.
Okay. So as a pedestrian, you would just kind of navigate yourself through the area at will?
Yeah, mostly the pedestrian, they come through the parking and then they go to the two entrances. The rest are not actually going to the rest. If you have a car to be repaired, you basically come directly to the parking, go to the inside, go to the parking, and And this is not that much of a slope. The only major slope is here, 12%. That was my concern. But the rest is only 5 to 2% slope. It's not really that much.
Gotcha. And just from my understanding, it seems like the ramp is located on city property, and is there going to be is that the case? And is there just going to be an agreement with the city for that infrastructure to be there?
This was the discussion with the engineering.
Okay. So it is city property?
City property is sloped into the boulevard, yes.
Okay, perfect. And yeah, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And myself, I have a question for staff, which is how sure the flood construction level change, how certain is that to be allowed? I'm just thinking of a ADP if this needs to come back, if it's not, if it needs to be raised. Is there any concern with that?
Yeah, that's a great question, David. So we referred this. That was pretty much the first action we did, is refer this to our flood engineer for review. The original slope was proposed to be not quite as steep as this, and they were asking for a much larger FCL reduction, and so there's actually some go back and forth with staff and their consultant to land on that 12% grade and get the flood construction level up. So I can confirm that, yeah, engineering has looked at it, and the flood construction level has been confirmed, and there hasn't been formal sign-off, but it's we're proceeding on the idea that it's been accepted. And
okay.
The exemption for the flood construction level will be approved kind of as part of this development permit process.
Okay. And I actually had a second question for you as well, is maybe I missed it at the start, but what particularly about the vehicle parking does not meet the zoning bylaw design?
I can't speak to the revised plans because I also just got them and was kind of going off the older plans, but some of the dimensions, so the actual width and depth of some of the parking stalls didn't meet our bylaws. The stalls were too small. And then some of the driveway width in the top right corner on the screen, the northeast corner, also looked really tight and wasn't dimensioned. So staff were just concerned that we were achieving adequate turning radii.
Okay, perfect. Great. Most of my other questions were answered by the other panelists, but I had one question for Farzan, which is, can you speak a little bit about the orange coloring? Where does that come from?
Just something to be happy. Just the gray color that we have everywhere. Something bright and make it different. That's all. Nothing specific about that. Except for the logo, which is orange anyway, too.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's all my questions. So does anyone have any other final questions before I go to comments? Jackie? Yeah.
I do. Yeah, and it follows on from your question. In terms of color, I see that there's kind of you have three materials listed: metal wall, the aluminum cladding, which is orange, and then the roof. But the walls look like they are kind of a beige gray color. What is that?
That's actually from this corrugated metal sheet that comes with the engineered roof. But I wanted to make it a bit more different, have a touch of color here and there. But they're all basically saying pre-engineered manufacturing, but we have to make it more interesting. That's why I put few colors there. And I try to make it some touch of different materials here and there. But mostly it's in the main elevation, in the north elevation. The rest are basically gray, neutral color.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Perfect. Anyone else or comments?
David, I just have one quick question.
Yeah, Mike.
Just again, going on what Jackie was asking too, is just like, what's the soffit material? on the building? Because there's going to be a substantial soffit, I would imagine.
Same corrugated metal. This whole thing is turning around, all around it. Just one material.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, great. We'll go to comments now, and we'll go back to Mike.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Farzan. I don't have a ton of comments. I kind of think the orange is kind of cool. I don't know if I would have picked orange, but at the same time, it's nice that it's not gray. So I think it looks good. I like the fact that you've got a ton of windows in the front of the building. It looks a little different than most of the other auto body shops and collision centers and sort of your typical mechanic shop. I'm not an expert on like how much room garbage trucks and stuff like that need to be. That's sort of Brent's area, but I kind of agree that that corner looks really tight if someone's parking in those parallel parking spots along the, which I don't have a north arrow on my screen, but on that far right-hand side of the building. And then it kind of looks like if people were parked in the front of the building, in front of the one office, those two parking spots filled up, and someone was to get their bike to the bike storage area or bike rack. I'm not sure how they would get there or move around or kind of get from the bike rack into the building. It looks a little tight in that corner. But, yeah, other than that, I think it'll look good.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks, Jackie. Comments?
Thank you again, Farzan. I like that you've given a very modern look to this building. You're trying to put a piece of art in an industrial space, and thank you for that. I like the orange, even though it's bright. I think it'll brighten up a very kind of mechanical-looking area. The only, again, my comment goes along with everybody else, is that very tight corner up in the northeast corner there. If that can be addressed so that there are no panic buttons pushed when a fire truck or a garbage truck or any other large vehicle needs to get in and out of there, then, yeah, that's the only comment I have of sort of note. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Jackie. Sarah?
Hang on. Sorry.
I think you're muted, Sarah. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, perfect. Thanks.
I apologize. I was looking at the other drawing. So my comments are the dimensions of the accessible parking stall are too small. Right now, you've got it at 3.24, whereas CSA calls for 4.6. I know my van, I need like a minimum of 4.3 or 4.4. So it's typically 2,600 millimeters for the width of the space, plus 2,000 for the access aisle. So if you can make that a little bit larger, that would go a long way. And otherwise, yeah, I think that the building is, more interesting than a typical body shop. So well done. And yeah, I think the orange will be a pleasant and happy reminder of people on a great day. Thanks, Farzan.
Perfect. Thanks, Sarah. Carlos?
Yeah, thanks for that. Not too much to add. I guess the only thing is, and we're working our way through a very similar building at the moment, albeit with a bit more ways to gussy it up. And I guess just the challenge in these pre-engineered steel buildings is when you try to make them pretty, things get complicated quickly. So I hope that the final product ends up looking a bit more like the rendering and not just like a pre-engineered steel building with a few things tacked on. So that's your challenge there. I would say if there's something to add, and I know that in the alignment that you've got with the many windows, it might be challenging to provide overhang to the pedestrian level. But I would look look into that if you can. It may mean you need to eliminate some windows, so there'll be a balance there as far as what the values of the developer are and the district. But overhang over some of those entrances is always a good thing to have, because I don't know if the overhang you've got at the very top of the roof there is going to be sufficient when it's raining cats and dogs. So other than that, you know, it seems like a utilitarian building, and that's what we want to see in our business parks. And so good on you for going and adding an extra step to it.
There you go. Thanks, Carlos. Brent?
Yeah, thanks, David. Yep, thank you, Farzan. I agree with the comments that have been said previously by the rest of the panel. Definitely think that it's a lot more interesting than a lot of what we see currently in industrial zones, and so happy to see that. And similar to my question, I just think you should confirm parking or garbage access for the garbage truck at the back of the building. And it'd be nice to see something other than chain link as well. If you are made use fencing, I know it's not shown on here, but you get to see something other than that. And that's it for me. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Brent. Christina, do you have any comments? Christina?
Hi, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Yep, great. So I echo the comments of the panel. I think it's refreshing to see some bright colors in an industrial park. So I applaud that. I also would encourage something other than chain link, unless it's some kind of chain link that's nicely colored. Maybe I'm not sure, but some more detail around that would be good. And I also, I'm not sure if I understood properly, was there more detail about the retaining wall coming as well? That's more of a question, I guess. But, yeah, I think I don't have the up-to-date plan, so maybe there is more detail. But, Farzan, did you speak to that at all?
No, I didn't. I actually didn't think there is a retaining wall. They're just telling me that there is some at the south side. That is most probably will be on the west side. Anyway, it's going to be concrete. It's on the west side. They tell me there is some retaining wall I didn't know about, and they think that it's going to be exposed concrete.
Okay. Yeah, and then in terms of the planting, I would just, encourage it to sort of blend in with the surrounding and keep it low maintenance and well irrigated and maintained. Yep. So great project. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Christina. Jenna?
Hi there. Yeah, great presentation. Like everyone, I think the pop-up color is really fun and playful. Seems a great way to make the building feel very fun without breaking the bank, so that's great. In terms of some comments, with regards to the ramp, I would encourage just another look at it to see if 5% is possible. I think it'd be great if it could be a walkway rather than getting into all the code requirements of ramps and how skinny and narrow it then becomes if it's an actual ramp. So that would be great if it's possible. I agree with the overhang. I think that's a really important amenity in Squamish in the winter months. I would encourage a look at the site plan to find an opportunity to get that landscape buffer back in the back of the property. I think it'll be really helpful for those adjacent neighbors. And agree also with the comments around the turning radius. It'll be important for the planners to be able to see those turning radius diagrams so that they feel confident that the site is functioning the way it needs to with all these heavy, big trucks coming through. And just with regards to the paving materials, I would encourage an investigation at the landing of the ramp and around the bike rack to see if there could be some feature paving just to help identify that there is more pedestrian traffic in those areas, particularly the ramp, because they're kind of just emerging out from the side of the hill, and it'd be great to kind of call that out in some way. And then with regards to the retaining wall, if it's possible within the budget, I think a board form might be a really nice way to kind of break it up and make it feel a bit less wall-like, if that's possible. But overall, I think it's going to be a pretty great industrial space. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Jenna. Yeah, and then my comments, I'll echo the committee there. I definitely agree with Mike's point about the bike storage. Needs to just have some rationalization at the front as to how you're actually going to get bikes if there's 2 trucks there. Echo the comments about the garbage turnaround. So I think that's something we're all querying at this point. And the last one, yeah, I really enjoy the orange. It's shown as a Lucobond. The only thing I would ask is that if it's shown as a Lucobond, it should stay a Lucobond. It's a very sharp material. It's going to make that orange really pop. If that gets value engineered down into a hardy board, suddenly this building isn't that fun, happy building that we're all happy about right now. So that'd be my only comments. Yeah, so we'll go to some recommendations, but I wanted to ask, is there any discussion that we wanted to have about any recommendations that anyone's feeling strongly for? No?
May I please comment?
Oh,
David?
Yep.
The retaining wall, which I didn't get a chance to ask about, and thank you, Christine, for bringing that up. It wasn't mentioned in the presentation, but is that something that the district is building, or is that something that the construction will be doing, and if it's the district, I would recommend the same as Jenna, or some sort of public art be put up there so that it's not subject to tagging.
Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe we can ask Asia to comment about that.
Definitely. Thanks, David. So that is on the developer and the architect team to resolve. That's not the district's responsibility. So I will be asking for clarification and more detail around both the fencing and the retaining wall. So definitely thank you for those comments, and we'll aim to make it as nice as we can.
Yeah, my comment is I don't want it to be tagged and destroy the rest of the lovely design.
Okay, and then I believe Sarah.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on what Jenna had said about material change and between the ramp and the rest of the site. I would just encourage you that, potentially just use concrete with saw cuts in it for their ramp so that it's going to be a relatively smooth surface. It's going to be distinct from the asphalt. And then, potentially use some pavers just in the front because it's going to be a flat surface and relatively easy to travel across. So, thanks, Farzan.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll read out the recommendations. We have 4. The recommendations are A, that the advisory design panel supports the project as presented and does not need to see the project returned for further review. B, that the advisory panel supports the project as presented and would like the applicant to work with staff to resolve the following recommendations. C, that the advisory panel supports the project as presented and would like the applicant to resolve the following recommendations and return to present the revised project to the advisory panel. And D, that the advisory panel does not support the project as presented for the following reasons. So do I have anyone to move?
I suggest B.
B, okay. Do I have any? That was Jackie that. Yeah. Do I have any seconds?
I'll second it.
Okay, perfect. So Sarah to second. So in that case, we would move for B, and then can I ask, is there anyone against? No? Okay, so I believe that motion carried for B. Was there any...
David, can we clarify what we want?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do now, because I would like to just have it maybe even just for the minutes to sort of say there was a couple of issues there. But was there, Jackie, was there anything particularly from you?
The turning radius and the retaining wall.
Yeah. Okay. And then I think there was the bike storage, and then sizing of ramps, I believe, maybe.
Size of park.
David, do you want
Parking
me?
and slope of ramp.
Yeah.
Do you want me to read through my list?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so yeah, I have the truck radius turning concerns, bike rack accessibility, review the dimensions for the disability stall, see if we can get any further overhangs over the pedestrian entrances, recommendation for review of both the chain link fence and the retaining wall to try to achieve something as nice as we can. Suggestion to ensure that the landscaping is low maintenance and has good irrigation, and a review of the pedestrian ramping to achieve a lower slope if possible, and to explore options for highlighting the pedestrian and bike areas for increased safety, and to show those areas, highlight those areas. That's it.
Perfect. Thanks, Asia. And I'd maybe just like to ask, is there anyone on the panel that doesn't agree with any of those general recommendations? No? All good?
The only that's missing the ramp. We specified the pedestrian realm, but, that we spoke specifically about the surfacing of the ramp.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy. That can be noted. Great. Okay. Then in that case, I think that's that item concluded. So I'm going to we'll have a 5-minute recess between the two to allow them. So we'll come back on at 3 p.m. Okay. Perfect. Thank you for joining us. We're back to Advisory Design Panel held on Thursday, August 20th, 2020. We'll now introduce the next item of business, which is Development Permit 545. This is 39455 Discovery Way. And I'll hand it over to the planner, Jessie.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Advisory Design Panel. My name is Jessie Fletcher, planner with the District of Squamish. Here today to present an application for a development permit for 2 new industrial buildings located at the northeast end of the Sea to Sky Business Park. The proposed buildings will have a gross floor area of 6,369 square meters, and it is located in the I-8 zone. That's the Specialized Industrial Business Zone, which permits the range of light industrial uses you see in the I-11 zone, but also some added business and professional office minor use. The proposed development is located in Development Permit Area 3. That's the universal guidelines, and it is subject to applicable Development Permit Area guidelines. This project has not previously been presented to Advisory Design Panel. So staff are seeking ADP's expertise and recommendations on building form, building character and materials, and landscaping as it pertains to those guidelines. Staff have highlighted specifically the building form and character as it relates to DPA guidelines number 36.4A, 36.4C, 36.10A, and 36.12B. And also the site plan, staff are seeking ADP comments specifically as it relates to pedestrian movement and sufficiency of internal landscaping. And I'll hand it over now to the project architect. I believe that's you, Joe. If you'd like to share your screen for the presentation.
Can you let me know which screen?
Go to the top of your screen. There's a button for share. And if you open it, as you can see, and go down to my screen, you should be able to share your presentation. Excellent.
Are you guys looking at my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I have three monitors here, so I'm just wondering which one are you guys looking at? Do you see my mouse here too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll start. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joe Trigos. I'm from David Nairn Associates, and we're working with for Solterra Development on this project on the architectural side of the building site. The site is located at 39455 in Discovery Way, at the northeast corner of Discovery Way and Pioneer Way. So Discovery runs south-north, Pioneer Way goes east-west. Its zoning is I-8, specialized industrial business. This is phase 2 of a previous developed, of a similar development, which we designed a couple of years ago, and we finished construction probably by this time last year. It consisted of 4 buildings, and this is going to be phase 2. The project consists of 2 light industrial buildings, building 1 on the north side and building 2 on the south side. This site is accessed by 2 principal driveways, one south of building 2 and another one between building 1 and building 2 of Discovery Way. There is no access off of Pioneer Way. There's an additional emergency-only access provided on the north side with breakaway bollards. Let's go to the next slide. I will return this slide a little bit. There's some usable open space here on the east side of Building 1 and another one on the east side of Building 2. It's covered area with wood trellis. We have covered bike racks there. We have provided trip-end facilities on the east side of building number 2, and a waste storage facility between both buildings away from the public roads. If need be, we will be returning to this slide later. This is building 1 on the north side of the site. It's facing, the main elevation is facing north. It's a building area of 2,593 square meters with 15 leasing units of probably approximate 166 square meters each. It has overhead doors in the front of the building and has loading doors, overhead doors, loading doors at the back of the building. Let's jump to building number 2. This is building number 2. It's facing on the north side, the middle driveway, and on the south side, of course, the south sideway. It has back-to-back small rental units. We have 30 of them with an average of 125 square meters each one. These are smaller units with each one with front overhead doors. As I spoke before, we have trip-end facilities here on the east side for the whole site, which is 2 accessible washrooms with accessible showers. And we have a caretaker unit for the whole site in this area. Okay, let's go to, these are the main elevations of the building. Sorry, I forgot to say that it's a 1-story building height, approximately 8.2 meters high, the top of the highest panel. This is 2 feet difference between these panels on building 1 only. This is building 1, Philp construction with a paint finish, all storefront glazing and overhead sectional glazing solid at the front and loading door metal sectional doors at the back. This building 2, main elevations. We have provided, as suggested by staff, some additional architectural features on the east side of the buildings to enhance its image and add some glazing there. So we provided a wooden covered trellis here to have more appealing look to the exterior front elevations. In terms of materiality, so as previously said, this is a concrete Philp panel construction. We have metal overhead sectional doors at the back of building 1 only, glazed overhead doors at the front of each unit, with the bottom panel solid. We have metal canopies covering front loading doors and main access door. We have accent panels painted in different colors, glazing, window glazing on above the main ground level. And as discussed, the east elevations are treated with this covered wood trellis to enhance this image of the buildings. I think on the architectural side, that's the main presentation. I don't know if you, David, want to start with the landscaping, or you have some questions before David starts.
No, we'll just go straight to David, if that's okay.
Okay. So how do I stop sharing my screen?
If you go back up to share, oh, there you go.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Okay, David, Rose, you should be able to share your screen now by clicking on share and then share my screen.
Can you see that? I'm now sharing. Is that visible?
So if you hover your mouse over where we are, the panels is showing, down there, there's like an arrow here, and it looks like there's something to share content at the bottom.
Is that it?
We can see your screen.
Can you see the drawing?
Yes, we can see the drawings.
Okay. Okay. Sorry about that. Basically, as far as the landscaping is concerned, we've got a fairly well-planted perimeter on three sides of the project. The north, east, and west property lines, we're proposing a mixture of coniferous and deciduous trees. On the east, we are solely using coniferous trees, but on the other side, on the north side, we're using a mixture. We're using ground covers and shrubs below that. And on the north and east property lines, we're using a combination of grading on the north side and retaining walls and planting on the east side and on the northeast wall. The west property line backs onto a low lock block wall that runs on the adjoining property. North to south, and we have a planting strip about 6 feet wide, which is on our side of the lock block, so that lock block will be screened by a hedge, and there are ground cover plants in front of that. The south property line runs along the middle of the laneway, and any requirements for accessing the loading resulted in us only being able to get relatively small planting areas in there, which we can also get some columnar trees very close to the building. So we do have some tree planting that we can go along the south side. The pedestrian circulation is from the southeast, from the southeast to southwest, and the northeast and the center. The sidewalks go around the north face of building 1, the north and south faces building 2. The sidewalks are on the off-site areas along the 2 roads to the the raised boulder walls along the sides of the amenity space, which show up on this small section here. They will be just inside the property line, and we have the amenity areas within that, which are here where we've got picnic tables and benches, which are sheltered by the covered way trellis on the side of the tree. The surface under here will be fairly informal with a sort of gravel surface under this area in the amenities.
It's very hard to hear you, David. You're
okay. Is that okay? Is that volume up there?
That's much better.
Okay. Yeah, the covered walkways along the east sides of the building also cover up the bike racks that are in that zone. Most of the bike racks are in there, but there are some in other parts of the site. The planting focus has been on the use of predominantly native species, but there are some other more non-native species as well as sort of highlight features. We have also referenced the wildlife-friendly landscape guidelines, and we've made recent adjustments to the plant selection so that we, for the most part, comply with those guidelines. So the recommended species for non-bear attractant are included. I think that's probably it. I mean, I could quickly run through the detailed drawings, but I guess you'll have had access to those, which is its own planting list. I don't think there's any more I can add to that, other than to say that there will also be, at very least, temporary irrigation provided for establishment of the landscape. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David and Joe there. Would it be helpful if we could maybe just bring up the architectural drawings while people ask questions? Because I always find that's we can usually relate to that. Would we be able to share Joe's screen again? Jesse?
Yeah, Joe, you've got the panelist ability again. Could you share your screen with the, you did perfect. Excellent.
Perfect, awesome. Okay, thank you. So for questions, we'll start this time around with Jenna.
Sure, thank you. Thanks so much for your presentation. I think a lot of my points were covered, my notes were covered through the presentation, so that was great. Yeah, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, easy one. Okay. Christina?
Thanks for the presentation. I don't have any questions either.
Okay. Brent?
Great. Thank you for the presentation. I have a few questions. One thing I noticed on the plans was the U-shaped bike rack was identified as having a 3-bike capacity. I just wanted to ask if that was the capacity you used when calculating bike parking.
The expectation would be that that would be used by two bikes generally.
Yeah, okay. So the 3 was maybe just a typo or something that...
Yeah. That was on the cut sheet, right?
Yeah. It was included in our package.
Yeah.
It said 3. I had a question about access for people biking and walking at this north emergency access. It looks as though it still has sort of a typical driveway ramp that goes down to street grade to provide access for people walking and biking. Just wanted to confirm that.
Sorry, I had it on mute. Would you mind repeating your question?
I was asking about pedestrian and cyclist access at the north emergency vehicle access, and whether or not that's sort of open and planned for people walking and biking to connect through there.
Yeah, for sure. That can be accessed by pedestrian and biking access for sure.
Okay.
It's only for vehicles that like regular vehicles. It's if a vehicle wants to go in, it's just emergency vehicles.
Okay. And then a question about I didn't see curb ramps on the section of sidewalk along Discovery. So I noticed there's curb ramps on the interior, but on the roadside, just was wondering if that was a miss.
Yeah, sorry. I missed that. I will put those curb ramps for sure there.
And also was wondering if you considered boulevard separation, so to have the sidewalk instead of adjacent to the road, to have it separated with the grass boulevard on the exterior instead of the interior?
There's some...
so that is a grass strip, okay.
That's correct.
Okay. And the trellis on the east side, is that fully covered, or is that?
It is fully covered, yes.
Okay.
So we wanted to provide a covered area on that path on the side of both buildings, and that helps us to improve also the image of both buildings and those elevations, right?
Yeah. And then I have another question about the pedestrian sort of crosswalk between the two buildings through the parking lot. That area there. And wondering if you guys explored continuing the sidewalk to provide a little bit of protection. It's a really long section for someone walking through there.
Yeah, we understand. The thing here is basically a loading yard, between both buildings. So most likely single unit trucks will be going through those lanes. So we didn't want to erase that portion of the pavement, right? So it's going to be only pavement marking over there.
Okay, or if you explored any other possible locations, then if you were to bring that into the middle of the two buildings instead of having it on the end, it would then allow sort of a safe spot for pedestrians crossing so they don't feel quite as exposed.
Yeah, well, the thing is that, each unit has its own overhead door, and then each unit has a loading style parking spot besides it, right in front of it. So without losing any parking spot there, we cannot provide a pedestrian access. But then you will have a walking surface down on the north side of Building 2, which connects to this pedestrian access, and then you can access the north side of the building, Building 1 on that side.
Okay. And how wide is the pedestrian walkway?
It's 5 feet.
5 feet, so that's, okay.
1.25 meters, yeah.
Okay. All right, I think that is it for questions for me.
Thank you, Brent.
Thanks.
Perfect. Thanks, Brent. We'll go to Carlos next.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. Joe, a quick question for you is, were you involved in the previous two buildings, the two phases?
For sure, yeah. We designed those in here. So the idea is basically to kind of match the same image look to make it feel as part of the whole development, right?
Okay, perfect. I've got some follow-up questions on that, but before I ask that, is there a question for staff? Is there any update to the status of the business park rezoning discussion that's kind of happening concurrently with this that we should take under consideration when looking at this plan, or is that just a separate process and we'll have to be assuming that these buildings will be used as the zoning currently allows?
I'd say at this point, while that process is underway, we need to review this building with the zoning that is in place.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. So I guess, Joe, could you take a couple minutes and just tell us, are there any lessons learned that you've had from the last two buildings that you did, and how did those factor into the decisions you made with regards to the materiality and the layout of these buildings?
Basically, it's not two buildings. There are 4 buildings on that phase 1 project.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, I think it was totally a success for the developer. So based on that approach and the feedback we got from the developer, they wanted to go with the same kind of image. Blending, the architectural features, canopies, materiality, painting, lighting. We have some accent galvanized panels there. So we followed that direction in terms to make it blended with the same idea of business plan and concept.
Okay, and I think Brent brought it up, but was there any thought to widening the sidewalk at all from the 1.5 to something a bit wider, just based on how much of a resounding success that zone is and how much pedestrian traffic it gets?
Well, this is kind of a marketing decision in terms of the developer side. I think we are meeting code with this. And then what that means if we shorten or if we widen those pedestrian access, that means we will lose leasable area, right? So that's the main thinking about it.
Okay, and then you spoke to it a bit, but so on the later versions of the building, I saw that you kind of highlighted, you bookended the building with some darker paint, and you seem to have brought wood as material in to, I'm looking on Google Earth right now, on kind of if the first phase is where Backcountry is, the next phase is where I guess it's FedEx or UPS is, and it looks like you've gone back to the galvanized metal as a treatment, and you've not kind of differentiated any of the bookends with a darker color. Is there a reason for that? Is that just you prefer the aesthetic of the first one to the second one, I guess?
Well, the main reason is to give it a little bit more movement. We did provide a kind of a similar palette in building 1, which is kind of the main building on the development 1 phase, which both ends of the buildings were treated in a contrast way than the middle of the building. Mm-hmm. So based on that idea, we brought those concepts in to try to differentiate and give accent colors to these different elevations.
Okay, and the last one, I just want to confirm. So your parking space, it looks like you're providing 2 loading spaces per unit, and so what you're saying is that those loading spaces, when not being used for loading, could be used for cars. Am I understand? It's almost like a shared parking model. Is that?
Yeah. Well, the tricky thing here is we have a certain number of required loading spaces per building, right? Mm-hmm. So based on that, we are providing those numbers, and the rest loading spaces per unit are, so we can treat them this as loading spaces, but they are counted as cars, right? But they are wider.
Right. And so I guess, are there any policies in the district to ensure that individual businesses don't then just block those loading spaces out forever and, say 24 hours a day, this is a loading space? Because if that's done, it looks like you have a pretty significant reduction in car parking spaces. So has there been any thought to how that gets managed on site?
Well, that's going to come with the developer side. I think that they did the previous the same thing in the first phase, and apparently it's working perfect. So I don't know about those policies, but it is my understanding it's working perfectly.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos.
Okay, perfect. We'll go to Sarah next.
Hi, can you hear me?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Can you tell me, with the accessible parking spaces, where you got to with only a 26? Can't see on these drawings. Let me go to mine.
Do you want me to identify where the accessible parking stalls are?
No, I know where they are, but I'm just wondering about the size specifications that you used.
Okay, so if we go...
Because there's no access aisle beside the accessible parking, right? They're just the spaces, which is sufficient in...
Well, the 1.5, so those, hold on a second. So those accessible cars are 4 meters by 5.8, and that includes the accessible aisle.
Okay, but it's not painted out specifically, it's just one space. Is that correct? Are you going to put them in there?
That's correct. If the city wants us to paint it, we will paint it for sure.
Right. I'm only suggesting that because you have such curb cuts to your sidewalk, and the curb cuts being at the top of the parking space. If there's not hatch lines on the access aisle, there's going to be people who are going to be driving into them who are not users, and you're going to be able to access that curb cut. So for anyone who's buggy, etc. So you really need to have some consideration as the curb cut locations, like having more of them. Because, can you tell me also on the east side of the building, are you proposing to put any furnishings under the trellis?
Yes. So this is a wooden trolley. Some areas are extended to allow for example, these are benches. Some of them will be accessible seating for sure. This is on the east side of building 1, and then if we go to the east side of building 2, we have a couple of picnic tables. This side will be, of course, treated. One of those sides will be treated for accessible seating, and then again we are repeating the same benches here for people to hang out there.
Okay, and then finally, what size of trees are you planting in the islands that are adjacent to the accessible parking?
David, do you want to answer that, or?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering what type of tree and what size these trees are going to grow to that are parked in the parking aisles adjacent to the accessible parking.
They will all have a clear 1.8 meters below the canopy of the tree, so there won't be any interference with people getting in and out of vehicles adjacent.
So, but what type are they? Because it shows just in your rendering of a circle of the growth of the tree coming out above that, and I'm just curious. 1.8 meters is the height clearance to go underneath, or?
Yes, that's it. It's the height of the clear stem below the canopy of the tree.
Okay.
So they're relatively small trees, but they will gain 1.8 meters at planting. So in terms of clear stem below the canopy.
Okay. That's all my questions right now. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. We'll go to Jackie.
Thank you, Joe and David, for the presentation. My first question is for staff. Is there for potential employees, is there a bus station, a bus stop nearby? Is it right outside? one of the main entrances along Pioneer or along Discovery Way or along both?
That's a great question, Jackie. I don't know off the top of my head. Asia, you don't know the...
No, just along Queensway for sure, but
Yeah.
I don't know where it stops along Commercial Way,
Yeah.
if it goes that way.
Sorry, you echoed there.
We know there's a bus stop on Queensway. We're not familiar with whether or not there's a bus stop on Commercial Way in front of the building or on Discovery Way, though our bus routes are constantly being reviewed, and Pioneer Way will, in the next few years, be built out, so I'm sure we will be revisiting bus stops, but at this point, I don't believe there's one that goes up Discovery Way that far.
Okay.
As far as I know, there's one located here.
Yeah.
On the southwest corner of Commercial and Queensway.
Yeah, no, I was specifically talking about either Pioneer Way or Discovery Way closer to that.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
I'm not aware of those.
Okay, that was for staff.
Yeah.
And for you, Joe, I noticed that staff, in the staff notes, you just put that up here. How do you plan to address the building material that it does not meet the green guidelines?
Hold on a second, please. So as you know, this is does not mean concrete. Concrete is a structural construction to ensure that there has good environmental impacts. It's a very durable material. So we do think that it stands depending on the sourcing of materials. It's going to be durable, and we do think it's the right material to use for this type of light industrial buildings.
Okay, well, have you considered other green concrete materials?
What do you mean by other green concrete materials?
There are green versions of concrete that can be used that give the sense of concrete and the durability of concrete, but aren't concrete.
What aren't concrete? Well, remember this is a tilt-up construction, right? This is the system we normally use for this type of buildings. So I understand you, but tilt-up construction is made this way, right?
Well, there are new tilt-up construction, green tilt-up construction options now, so I just wondered if you had considered them.
We're going to look for those for sure.
Okay, thank you. And just in terms of the facade, could you pull up that part of the presentation, please? I could just see...
This one or the detail one?
The detail one, please. That one. It looks like there are some... It's really hard to see. Are they just outlines of greenery growing up the sides of the building?
On the east and west, on the east elevation of both buildings, yes. Well, I kind of showed the contour of those Alaskan cedars that's going to be planted there.
Okay.
In front of that wooden trellis.
Okay.
Sorry, I was going to say the Alaskan cedar gets up to about 35 feet high, maximum.
Okay. How do you plan to address, I know in I think it was phase 2 where the FedEx building is, you added some nice kind of wood accents to the building, and I don't see that on phase. Would you consider that to get more an aesthetic feel as opposed to a kind of utilitarian feel?
we for sure will consider those.
And my final question is about public art, and I see that it has not met the guidelines. In your public spaces there, would you consider public art?
The owner is not considering public art in this project.
That's all my questions.
Okay, thanks, Jackie. Mike?
Thanks for the presentation there, Joe. I think most of my questions have been asked, but I might have missed a few of the answers, so I apologize if I'm asking the same questions again. But the trellis on the east face, what material is that made out of?
The trellis, the wooden trellis on the east side of both buildings is wood frame. It has wooden columns, and it has a wood soffit, and it's covered with corrugated metal, galvanized, as same as the previous face.
Gotcha. It's this. Oh, I see. It's the same one as you guys put on the FedEx building?
That's correct.
Gotcha. Is there a reason? So I'm a little confused because I'm on Google Earth and I'm looking at the street view and I'm looking at the backcountry building, which I've visited many times, and I realize now that there's no continuous covered walkway on that building. But a lot of the buildings that we've been looking at that are going in industrial park lately, we've been pretty harsh on the designers and developers to make sure that there's a continuous covered walkway for pedestrians. Is that, and it's actually in the notes from planning that there's no continuous canopy. Is that something that you guys could incorporate? Is it, there's a conscious reason for not doing that?
We try to mark these canopies as a standout of each individual unit instead of having the whole thing like blend together. So we're kind of following what we did on phase one. We will talk with the owner to see if they are willing to provide a continuous canopy. But at this point, it is my understanding they don't want to, but we'll talk with them for sure.
Okay. Again, going back to sort of tall tree and backcountry building, it looks like each unit on the parapet wall has a bit of a dip in there to kind of help indicate each unit, like a sort of a new rental space. And then I'm looking on the architectural drawings. Actually, you've got it right on the screen right now. There's no sort of undulation or any change to the facade on it at all. I think building one might have this center unit that dips down a couple feet, but the rest of them are all uniform all the way across with no sort of indication. Is that something you guys could include, or was that a conscious decision to not do that?
Yeah, it was actually one of those requirements. To do that in previous buildings, we need to raise those parapets like by 3 feet. That cost a lot of money. So in this building, we tried to have the same, just one single volume of the building. We tried to acknowledge that a little bit on building one by raising those middle units, but the main idea was to be a little bit more on the economical side for those buildings.
So the reason is for cost, not for anything else.
Well, yeah, it was cost driven for sure.
And then just as far as efficiency goes, I'm not 100% sure as to like what standard these are held to for the step code, but how is this building insulated? I was kind of looking at the cross section, and it looks like there might be a wall framed on the inside that would give you the opportunity to put insulation in, but I wasn't sure if that was actually the case on the exterior walls.
Well, we're going to be using exactly the same system we used on phase one, which was like a solid concrete structural panel on the outside with continuous quick term insulation on the inside.
Gotcha. Yeah. I think that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Farzan?
Yes, fine. Thank you, Joe and David. I have a few little questions. One is about this northeast side, the gate for the collapsible, I think, boilers for the emergency entries. How does it work?
Sorry, person, your audio kind of broken. I couldn't hear your answer.
Okay, if you go back to slide 50. Okay, I think northeast entrance, yes. It says collapsible, I think, I can't see that, but it's some kind of a collapsible something for emergency. How does it work?
I'm going to show you a quick example of those breakaway bollards. Bear with me a little bit. Do you see now my screen a little bit?
Right. I can.
So these ones are some examples of steel ballers that will be breakaway in case of an emergency vehicle comes, right?
Right. Do it have any lock or anything, or it's just anybody can make it collapse?
We have to be talking with the fire department,
okay.
But normally they don't have locks, right?
Okay, and the hatched area, what does it signify in the fire?
Sorry, person?
The hatched area in front of it, what does it? Is it different material, or was it? If you go back to the site plan, this hatched area.
Which one?
Right there, where you have a backup area. Where if you.
Is right here?
At the same place at the northeast corner. Yes.
Oh, it's a car turnaround facility.
That's just to show that the car can turn around.
That's correct.
Okay. At the side east elevation, you have some glazing, right?
Yes. So building number 1, we have some glazing here.
Right.
Building number 2, we have on both sides. So there are 2 units.
I see, and the rest are just paint. Okay, and I see that there's some temporary overhead loading doors. What's that?
The overhead loading doors?
Temporary overhead loading doors. What is that for? Temporary door?
Sorry, where did you see that?
West side. Is that the west side of building, I think, 1?
Oh.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, that's correct. So no truck will be parked here. It's just a temporary overhead door to have these end units have an additional loading door, overhead loading door on both sides.
So it's temporary loading, or?
It is temporary loading, yes.
So they can park there, but not for a long period?
They will not park there. Right? They just have the flexibility to these end units to have an extra loading area over there on that side.
Okay. Now I could go to the building 2. Do we have any loading door, or just to mention the front overhead doors, and they are about 10 foot high? Is that correct?
That's correct.
I see. So it doesn't have a normal depth. And the wooden trellis, is it attached to the building?
It is attached to the building, yes.
And is it in the setback area?
It is in the setback area, but this is a zoning. Hold on a second. I want to point out an exception is zoning. So, per zoning bylaw, and the architectural features like these trellises, campus ornamental or similar architectural features are allowed to be projected into this required setback.
So it's basically the whole setback area. And I'm not expert in code, but is it allowed to have some combustible materials in the setback area and attach it to the building?
I will look into it. I'm not really sure, but for sure we'll look into it. I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah.
Okay. For the mechanical and electrical room that you have out there, where is the access? It's right behind the PMT?
For building 1, it's right behind the PMT, correct? And for building 2,
it's inside. Yeah, that doesn't matter. But the one in building 1, how is it? I mean, I didn't see it on the elevation. Is it 1 story? How high is it? What's going to happen? And then, because of this electrical room, you lose the access, the pedestrian access to the eastern unit, right? Open the door, open the gate. You don't have an entrance. 101 at the back.
We have an exit here.
Oh, from the other side.
It's an exit, and this is the main entrance here.
Right, yeah, I didn't see that.
On the north side.
Okay. So, about the covered continuous walkway, you think that you may be able to do that?
About the continuous what?
Continuous covered awning.
We will talk with the developer. It is my understanding they wanted to continue the same image looks for as phase 1. That's why we provided this, not to be continuous, just to make stand out each individual unit.
So if he says no, it's too much money, you pass it on. Is it your decision or developer's?
Well, it's both.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's all my question, David. Thank you.
Thank you, President.
Okay, thanks. I think we're on to just my questions. A lot's been asked already. I had a question. I don't know if it's a silly one, but why is the access to the northeast emergency only?
Well, the staff planning department didn't want an access for regular vehicles too close to Pioneer Way. That's the main reason.
Okay. And then, am I, again, maybe silly, but am I right in thinking that there is an access in the southwest corner?
That's correct. This is like kind of, this is building 3, this corner. And then the far south west corner is building 3 of phase 1. So that's correct. There's an access through here, like an interior lane.
Okay. Have you guys considered anything other than just flat signage on the commercial units?
Well, it's going to be each tenant responsibility to see what type of signage, right? But right now we are thinking that it's just flat signage for the building.
Okay. Colors. Could you maybe speak to the color palette choice?
Yeah. We went, hold on a second, I can specifically tell you what. So we went with the gray old for as per phase 1. So to make kind of a unique development altogether. And then we chose this gray for Benjamin Moore to have those accent panels, just to make them stand out a little bit and not make it too flat over the long elevation.
Okay. I mean, one of the DPA guidelines is to do sort of authentically, integrate elements from Squamish. Was there any other consideration given to any other color other than gray?
For sure, we can look into that for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Going back to the sustainability question is always a bit of a bugbear for us. I don't like to hear when, it's just concrete because that's the way we do it. But was there any thought into maybe a kind of green roof or just anything to kind of make this project sustainable?
Well, it has to do a lot with cost, right? Green roof, normally we don't use green roofs in this type of buildings. What we do with this kind of projects, what we normally do is use ballasted EPDM membrane, which will kind of helps us to reduce the heat effect, right? In terms of concrete hilltops, it's a tough question, but I will look into the other option that Jackie was mentioning for sure.
Okay. And then the parking, I noticed that staff have brought up as well, you know, that you've not strictly adhered to the requirement to break up the parking with these landscape islands. Will you be deficient in parking if you were to put landscape islands there?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think that's my questions. Okay. So now unless anyone else have any other questions before we go into comments?
Sarah has.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
I actually wasn't on mute. I just have one question. So the rough-in washrooms in all of the units are just that, and that the people are meant to use the universal washrooms until they build out their bathrooms. Is that correct?
So how we normally do this is for the shell-based building, we typically provide one washroom as required, like a built washroom there, and then depending on use of each tenant, we leave those rough-ins, and then depending on use and the desired layout, they have to install one. But that second washroom or each washroom in that unit will come out in the TI phase.
Okay.
Initially, for those 3 pen facilities, those will be provided within the base building for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So we'll go back round for comments, same order. Jenna, can we start with you?
Sure, sounds good. So thanks for the presentation and all the clarification with the questions. It's really helpful. I'll start with the site plan. Overall, the site plan to me seems quite packed in. I think that it's really important that the parking does meet the bylaw requirements, and maybe it means that there's too many units in this building that's requiring more parking than the site can actually provide. So I would encourage the team to look at those parking requirements and see what is really required of the site to meet that. And again, it may mean that it is a bit too big for the site. In particular, from a sustainability perspective, getting that planting in is really important. And also, for example, in the north corner, we're seeing parking stalls at 8% slope, which really means that they're not usable. So I'd encourage the team to take a look at that.
Sorry, Jackie. Jenna, which parking stalls?
At the north corner where we were looking at that emergency exit area, there's a ramp at 8%, which means that the parking would be at 8%.
No, there are no parking at 8% here. So are you referring to this parallel parking?
Not the parallel parking, the parking bays in front of the building.
These guys are running at 4.5% max.
If you go over to the right where the emergency hatch is.
Oh, this guy? Okay.
Yeah.
These two? Okay.
Yeah,
we'll look into that for sure.
In terms of ped movement, I agree with my panel members. It'd be great to take a look and see if there's an opportunity to get that ped movement away from the really strong turning radius of the vehicles, just to allow for that safe movement of the pedestrians. I would encourage, if it's feasible, to have a ramp on Discovery Way. Looks like there's a lot of grade change between the building and the road, and stair elements in that area. It'd be great to have a ramp area in that area as well. I would echo, capturing some of the questions that were asked by some of the panel members, I would say that the continuous canopy within the pedestrian zone is very important in Squamish, and I would encourage that to be incorporated into the building. And in terms of the massing, I do find this building to be very continuous and monotonous, and I'd really encourage massing be broke down in some way, whether it's color, texture, insets, something, just to break it up from this very kind of continuous look, particularly when this building really is a replication of phase one. It just makes that continuous look that much more continuous. So I would encourage looking at opportunities there to break up the massing where possible. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Jenna. We'll go to Christina.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, pretty quiet.
Yeah, sorry. I was on the phone and then I switched to a computer, but it doesn't have a camera, so
Okay.
I'll try to speak into it as loudly as I can. I don't know how to turn it up. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, that's great.
Thanks very much for the presentation. I agree with a lot of what my colleague Jenna had to say, about keeping ensuring the pedestrian safety and cover, and maximizing the parking or at least meeting the requirements of the bylaw. I think that's really important for an industrial building, given its intended use. I think it's great to see the impermeable pavers. I think that's a step towards some sustainability. It might be nice to see the permeable pavers in your staging area potentially as well. I'm not sure what that hatched area, if that's just painted to delineate a certain space in terms of usage, but maybe that's an opportunity there for permeable pavers as well. I think it would be nice to see some more articulation on the building. That the two grays, are kind of, especially on a gray day, could be a little more interesting. So maybe with color or another material. I did see some notes in the planning report, and I'm not sure if these were addressed. Site lighting, irrigation. Did you speak to those already?
I did mention the temporary irrigation that we're going to be providing for establishment purposes.
Just for establishment?
Yeah, that's the intent.
Okay. And we're still waiting on a site lighting plan, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. And I'm not sure if there is an overall plan, but I would just encourage whatever this, plan consists of, to be cognizant of what's happening with the buildings around it so we don't get sort of a doubling up, which tends to happen. And then the other question is, there's a discussion about rock stack walls. There's not a question, it's more of a comment. But on the plan, it's natural boulder, and natural boulders typically would be not tiered, but there's some question about tiering the walls. So I'm not sure if this was more of a zoning situation or not, but if there is an opportunity to tier the walls, I know there isn't a lot of space there, but that could assist with adding some more landscaping in, if possible. You could tier some trailing plants or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. But otherwise, I think it's a nice project, and thanks for the presentation.
Cool. Thank you, Christina. We'll go to Brent.
Great. Thanks, David. And yeah, thanks, David, Joe and David. And yeah, similar to Christina, I definitely agree with what Jenna and Christina have commented on previously. I think that when I look at this design, I think the existing buildings, and I think that there's, for me, too much in common in the massing and the colors that it doesn't really provide any sort of character or excitement. I also look at how many of the businesses in the first phase are being used, and I think that ensuring safe and comfortable and vibrant pedestrian spaces is really essential to sort of continue with the zoning as the same. So I think that ensuring there's a wide covered pedestrian walkway and safe connections between the two buildings is essential. And I think that sort of similar to one of the staff's comments, that allowing more space for landscaping in the parking lot would create some additional protection for pedestrians and hopefully slow vehicles down as well. I think that often you have these parking lot environments where, especially along the west elevation, there's not a lot of windows and could be a dangerous space for people walking along the pedestrian walkway. Yeah, and that's pretty much it for me for comments. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Brent. Carlos?
Thank you very much. So I guess, Solterra development, the first phase kind of kicked off this tsunami of built-up buildings in our business park, and I think our community is much better for it. I think it's provided a lot of great opportunities for growth, and I've been a really strong supporter of these built-up buildings going into our business park, so I'm going to try not put my foot in my mouth too much. But that said, it seemed like from your first set of buildings to your second set, there was an improvement in the aesthetics, and I think we've seen a lot of these tilt-up buildings come through, and we've actually pushed them to improve their, pedestrian functionality, their functionality as like industrial buildings, and generally the way they look. And it appears that in this iteration, you've kind of gone back to the first version. And since the first version, we've had a new official community plan. We've had a DPA 3 guidelines come into play. So I think it's not an evolution of this site that I think the community, and certainly myself and hopefully some of the panelists, want to see. So to that, I would say, I think your steps that you took with wood as a material and some darker colors were really great on the second version, and I'd really like to see you pull that in to this latest iteration. You've shown the building from phase 1, but you kind of left out for context, and I think it is important, like the Squamish storage facility is located just adjacent to this building, and as far as storage facilities go, I think they kind of push the limit on as far as design, and it does have wood, it does still have gray, so I think there's a balance there that you can strike, but I think there needs to be a bit more of a consideration of context with regards to this building. And I guess the one other aspect is just, I do understand that we have to review this in context of the existing zoning, but there are potentially a lot of changes coming down the pipe for this area. And I think what we've seen is that if you do hear what you've done in the rest of the development, and there are breweries with great, public house components to it, which I hope continues in this area. You do need to have some wider sidewalks. You do need to have some ability for those businesses to spill out into the parking lot and occupy some of that space like Backcountry is now. And so I would almost rather see this come back when that zoning is sorted so that we have a fair chance to look at a building that might actually be able to be improved and thus get a higher rent and thus justify some nicer features, as opposed to doing this and then you getting that additional opportunities in association with the zoning, and then trying to, again, shove a bunch of uses that do demand more parking and more public space into a site that is designed to be quite tight. So I don't think you're miles off, but I think there are some steps that need to be taken to bring this building in line with the other tilt-up buildings that we've seen. And it seems like we've only seen tilt-up buildings the last few panels. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks, Carlos.
Cool. Thanks, Carlos. We'll go to Sarah.
Hi. Yeah, I'm just going to say what everyone else has said, is that there needs to be some greater consideration for the pedestrian access around the site, through the site, additional curb cuts to access the sidewalks. The sidewalks need to be wider. So a CSA calls for a minimum of 1,600 millimeters. I would say that 1,700 millimeters is what's called for turnaround, but it needs to be wider than what it is. The parking spaces, I know you've met the minimum requirements of the zoning says, but CSA calls for actually 4,600 millimeters wide. So that's your 2,600 millimeter wide space with a 2,000 millimeter wide access aisle. It's going to be tight otherwise. If people are parking on the line, then suddenly that's unusable. And you should have the access aisles painted out separately so that it's clear that it's leading to a curb cut and that somebody's not going to park over top of that. The furnishings, I would encourage you to have some of the benches have some armrests on, have the picnic tables to have an extended end to them, and the crosswalk where it's currently located, yeah, you're going to have some sightline issues, and some, reconsideration of that space, and if not, then to somehow make that crosswalk a bit more prominent. I mean, I heard from you that you don't want to have it raised. Maybe it needs to be just a wider painted zebra line, very obvious, but yeah, I just see there being some conflict there. And yes, I think a continuous canopy, given our climate, is something that's necessary. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Jackie?
Thank you, Joe and David. Thank you for clarifying and answering our questions. In terms of the massing and the aesthetic of the building, I do encourage using green material like Nexite or green concrete or consider green roofs. And in terms of the form and the color of the building, definitely move away from gray. There's another building at the south end of Discovery Way and Industrial Way that is a tilt-up that has now used some very exciting color and wood, and it has really made that corner quite interesting. So I encourage that. And also covered walkways, because it does rain here, and if we're talking about pedestrian safety and accessibility, that's one way to address it. It also helps address the monotony of the facade on either side of the building. And again, I told many of the other people is to get away from the first building of phase one and look at some of the things where you succeeded in the second building of phase one, and also look at even taking it up 2 more notches and adding color and form. And in terms of public art, consider it in terms of your furnitures in the open access area where your picnic tables are. You can have furniture made by an artist. You can have refuse containers wrapped in art. All of that area can be aesthetically pleasing and address the public art issue through your furniture. And again, just my comment to staff is to please consider, again, as part of the pedestrian issue, people working there is public transit accessibility points around that area. Thank you.
Jackie? Did we do Mike? Mike.
Thanks for the presentation. I've got some very similar comments, obviously, but I think they should be recorded, so I'll say them again. I think a continuous covered walkway is an absolutely essential element, and I don't think that phase one should be used as an excuse not to do it. There's a few other projects that we've seen come in where they kind of had a very similar design to what you had, and they were able to connect the elements, but still kind of keep the individuality.
Sorry, Mike, can you repeat that again? The audio turned off.
Sorry?
Mike, if you could just repeat your last comment, you cut out for a bit there.
About that. Yeah, I've actually seen a couple of projects come through recently that had uncontinuous awnings on the units, and they were able to come back for a second presentation with an option that still kept sort of the individuality of each unit, but with a continuous awning. So they kind of changed the height of it or changed the materials. So I do think that there's a way to do that on this one. Talking about Jackie's comment and the options for like a greener concrete. Obviously, this whole building is built of concrete, so I don't know if that's going to fit into the budget, but I was at BuildX this past February, kind of learning everything I could about embodied carbon. And I know Lafarge has concrete mix that does cost a bit extra, but it's not an arm and a leg, and the embodied carbon level of that concrete as opposed to sort of the regular stuff that we're buying is substantially different. So it could be something you guys could look into, because we are buying concrete here in Squamish from Lafarge now, so might be worth looking into. I also feel like both buildings are super just kind of monotonous with the roof line, and I know you mentioned before the parapet was needs to be cost. What we're getting from this building now should be something that we should be getting because of cost. Like I think there needs to be some sort of change or modulation or change in that roof line. And then again, just like kind of whatever else said, I think
we lost you, Mike. Your connection was kind of back and forth there. Mike? No, okay, great. Mike, you.
I think my.
Okay, we'll move on to fires and then. Thanks, Mike.
Hi, thank you, Joe and David. I will be very brief. I also think that the giving character to units, instead of having the awning for every unit, instead of that, we should have more variation of the massing, elevation, break up the units more than just with the awning. I think awning would be helpful to continuous. If you park somewhere and you want to get to the other unit, it's not so much fun to go to parts of awning, especially to be continuous if you cannot park right in front of the unit. So I encourage you to have the maybe 2 or 3 units as one block or one shape, or break it more, give more variations, and I really encourage that instead of just having smaller pieces of awning in front of every unit.
Okay. Thank you, Farzan. And then, yeah, my comments would be, I guess really just for a project of this size and scale, I was just a little bit underwhelmed, to be honest, about what's proposed. I was really hoping Carlos asked a great question about maybe some lessons learned, but it didn't seem that there was any lessons learned. There was just a resounding success. But for my daily use of that area, there's a real need for more bike parking, a real need for more future areas for breakout patios, for larger communal areas, for areas in front of sidewalks, for planters, much wider sidewalks like we've all talked about. So that's what I was kind of looking for. My comments about sustainability and this integrating Squamish elements, it's something I always mention because we are meant to review this against EPA 3 for better or for worse. And in the industrial park, it just seems to be all too often dismissed or overlooked. But I think we have an opportunity here to really sort of hit those and do something special. I think if it has to be concrete, then there's other things you can do to offset that. You know, giant square foot of green roof, wood trellises, anything to just really elevate this project and not make it look exactly like other concretes. Just because this area is so large that when you have monotonous buildings that are continuous, the whole area just has this monotonous feel. So each of the buildings can jump out. And Jackie was right. There's another building that's got lots of color on it. There's the Leon Lebanese building that's timber. There's certain elements that are jumping out, which is good. Color as well, I think, really needs to be just reviewed. I mean, I would encourage the applicant, to move away from just gray on gray on gray, especially as these buildings are just surrounded in a sea of asphalt. And I would encourage angled signage or some sort of scheme to get signage off the face of these buildings. I've discovered in these long runs of 100-foot buildings, it's very hard to see what units are if they're the 15th unit down on the right and the sign is flat facing the other unit. I have to walk through this giant car park, so maybe consider something like that. And then I kind of spoke already about the sidewalk, but yeah, echo other panel comments that it really needs to be wider, not least because the doors open onto it, but also because we've seen uses of wheelchair access, multiple people walking past, and people maybe putting planters out. So that's my comments. Does anyone have any further or last comments to add from the panel?
I do. David, yes, I do. Sorry, just riffing off of Mike's comment and to emphasize the green, there's another product called Nexite, as I mentioned, and Nexi is a new on the scene, and they will be a local producer of a building material and building tilt-up material. And so I encourage this developer to consider that. It's both local and it's green.
Okay, thanks, Jackie. Great. So if we've got no further comments, what I'll do is I'll ask if there's any discussion over any of the options, the recommendations that we can make. I won't read them again if that's okay, but we've got the A, B, C, D. Does anyone have any comments first before we think about options? No? Well, if I could just maybe add that one of my comments are when we're discussing changes to building mass as something that we're all I'm picking up that we're kind of quite interested in the modulation of buildings and then the materiality of buildings, that's something that we probably want to see again, is my personal, if we're talking about issues like that.
I agree with that, David.
If there's any discussion around that or anyone who doesn't agree with that or... No? Okay. Does anyone want to make a recommendation?
I will. For C.
Yeah. C? Do I have anyone to
I
second?
agree. I second it.
Okay, so Jackie to second. So in the new system, is anyone against? No, so all in favor of C. So, but the advisory panel would like the applicant to resolve the following recommendations and return to present the revised project to advisory panel. And I also think it would be worthwhile if we could just do what we did with the last one, which is to summarize the main bullets that we're looking to see back again. Is there any discussion around that?
I just have one comment, is that based off of what Jenna said about the parking spots, the last two being at 8%, the accessible spot being at 4.5, that's over the allowable limit for an accessible parking space. It should be about 2.
Okay, perfect. So maybe so we talk about parking being a major issue with the accessibility, and also tying into the accessibility just of the sidewalks and the maneuverability of pedestrians around the development. We had door swings. I think modulation was something that was echoed by a lot of people of the facades, breaking up the units per facade.
Continuous cover.
Yep, continuous cover. Yep, that was one that was said by all.
Color and any kind of making it a green project in any way.
Yep. And integrating any Squamish elements into the build is something. Anything else that anyone else wants to sort of add as a standout point, or anything that we're missing?
We spoke of the size of the building and therefore the parking requirements and the ripple effect of how limited the landscape is because of how many parking stalls we need. So perhaps the size of the building, in fact, might be larger than the site can actually hold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perfect.
Hi, it's Christina. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
I would also add that we're still looking for a site lighting plan. And we're looking for details around this rock wall.
Okay. Yeah, they're great. Good. Yeah. If anyone else has anything else to add for that one, or I think we're good. Perfect. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, David.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. And thanks, Jesse. Okay, moving on. I don't believe we have anything from council. Status of recommendations to council. Unsure what that item is. No? Okay, I'll just keep going. Referrals from council, nothing there. No correspondence unless, yep. And then any further roundtable discussion?
I just wanted to make a comment about how we receive the information. So it's easier for me. I prefer it if we have the report separate with a link to the drawings so that we can have the report open and see the drawings at the same time instead of having to go back from the drawings further back to the report. So if I could just make a recommendation to try and have those separated as Jesse sent them to us, not as agents sent them. It just makes it easier to jump between the two documents.
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you.
Carlos?
Yeah, and I'll just, Jesse, I did overhear some discussion when we were on break between yourself and Asia and the staff just on my comment at the beginning of this meeting, and I think it's not a comment as far as staff's recording of recommendations. I think it's more for our panel and the way in which we tabulate our varying opinions on projects if there is something that's contentious or there's a split, because I think it's on our active panelist end to work on and hopefully move forward with. It's not a slight on the way that you've collected information.
Thanks for clarifying, Carlos. So just to follow up on that, would you want to see reflected in the minutes like how many panel members voted for A, B, or C, kind of to show support or lack of support? Or
yeah, I just think that our last conversation, I think in the minutes doesn't really, you'd have to watch the video to get a true sense of the kind of varying opinions. And I think that we probably could have pushed that discussion a bit further and collected a bit more of a narrative to attach to that. But
yeah, I think it's a symptom of being online, to be honest, because when we all sit around, we all kind of have these little discussions, but online you sometimes don't see the person's face. So it was more, I think there was some comments that came out that not necessarily everyone would agree with them. So people should be given the opportunity to have it noted that they don't agree with that gets minuted. Otherwise, council just read, there's this statement, great, they were all in unanimous agreement about those statements. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for
clarifying. Jackie, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just back to the comment I made at the beginning was that we get more context on various projects, also where they are in the status of going to council or going to public hearing. Where are these projects? Something like this one that just got put to us is a brand new project, and thank you for that. But others, like the Bridge one, we didn't know where it was in this process, so it would be nice to have context of where the project, the status is.
Thanks for that feedback,
When we
Jackie. Yeah, we can try to, when we do our staff spiel at the beginning of projects, we can attempt to provide additional context in where the project's at in the particular development process.
Right, and where that is also where, in terms of council, that is part of the council comments at the end. But yeah, that would be very helpful.
Yeah. And then I actually had one question for staff, or just comment was, we seem to be getting packages that don't necessarily reflect what is then shown to us on slideshows. And sometimes they vary slightly, but sometimes they vary, we see brand new renderings, we see, amazing stuff that clears up a lot of our questions. And I'm sure we all research and spend some time in the days before this, putting all our questions together, and then suddenly there's something that doesn't look like the present PDF that we have. So I just wondered, is there a big lag between receiving the agenda packages and giving them extra time to work on stuff before presentation?
So, David, I can clarify. There's maybe about a week or a week and a half in between those two, and I think it's maybe on staff, the onus of staff, to be a bit more strict in emphasizing to the applicants that what they've submitted and what has been released on the agenda needs to be what goes to the council, and that, if they're not organized or not satisfied with what's being brought to the, what's being put on the agenda, then maybe we need to delay, and that it's not that they bring the revisions the day before. I agree with you guys on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because sometimes I feel that they do a disservice to themselves with the PDFs they give us. And then I have one opinion, and then I see the presentation, and I think, oh, it's not actually that bad. So, yeah, that's my comment about that.
Thanks. Yeah, I think the onus should be on staff to be more strict and more clear with the applicants in that regard.
Great. Okay, thank you. Any more discussion, or? No? Okay. Perfect. Can I have a motion to terminate from someone? Sarah, second. Oh, free rent. Like celebrity squares. Okay, cool. Yeah, meeting adjourned. Thank you.